Like you said, my name's Charlton Perry. I speak to big groups of people all the time. I seldom, do I need to stay in front of the camera? Okay. I seldom speak to people who are my age, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to warn you right now, I have ADHD as bad as any kid I've ever taught, so I may get off topic, but it's usually entertaining, so we'll roll with it. So St. Stephen's is a neighbor right down the street. It's a diocesan school. I don't know if y'all know what that means. We're not a parish school like St. Andrews, for example. It's also an Episcopal school. We belong to the diocese. The bishop is our chair. So, we were not something that hatched as us and got bigger at a local church with a daycare and then an elementary school. A couple of really radical bishops came out to St. Stephen's and decided to have a radical experiment, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. This slide is a joke that was left in here. I'm so glad some of you knew Catherine Rasmus, because she used to do this slideshow about St. Stephen's, and she would say, this is the history of the school, and you're going to be expected to know it. And she would start with the Cretaceous period 100 years ago. And the kids like, oh my God, this is way more than that. But that's it. That's really all I've got there. And then the next slide is about the folks that lived there before us. I want to confess, especially since this is an educational institution, I fully embrace the common trend of acknowledging the folks that were on the land before us recently. But also, having taught Texas history, I get squeamish about how we do it sometimes. I sometimes think we romanticize Native Americans, we take all agency away from them, and we make them these little kind of earth hippies that are super kumbaya and loved each other. And when I talk about our history on our campus, there's signs that the Tonka lived there, and then they were forced off in a really successful war of genocide waged by the Comanche against them before we did the same thing to the Comanche. So it's a complicated and bloody history, but it's safe to say and fair to say the Tonka were definitely there, and the Comanche there after that. And the Comanche were in this little hollow well into the 19th century. I learned a lot about this place, actually, trying to prepare for this talk, and I'll share some of that with you all tonight. So when Bishop Hines and Reverend Brewster came to St. Stephen's, or wanted to found a school, they were looking at, I don't know what inspired them to come to Texas, but they weren't from here. And they were disgruntled with Episcopal education in New England. It was too white, it was all single gender, and it was only wealthy kids. And Bishop Hines, who would later become the head of the Episcopal Church, right before John Spong, was a pretty radical civil rights bishop. And he felt like God's school should look like all of God's children. So they went to Texas, of all places. And they narrowed it down to Camp Swift, a retired Army base in Bastrop, or a really exhausted goat farm right across the street over here, right? And for some reason they chose the ranch. I think they chose it because it's a really beautiful, I think they were just a little gobsmacked with the gorgeous setting. And they didn't realize that nothing that they wanted to do in terms of agriculture was going to work. They were going to have dairy cattle, they were going to farm, and that was not possible. It would have been possible in Camp Swift. It's not possible it's still not possible where we are, really, on a large scale. But before that, it was going to be a Chautauqua. Now, I'm glad there's some grown-ups here, because y'all probably have heard of Chautauqua, but it was kind of like the rock festival of the late 19th, early 20th century, or grown-up summer camp, whatever you want to call it. There was going to be a Chautauqua at St. Stephen's. Also, developer and philanthropist Nicholas Dawson put out his prospectus to sell lots from what is now our campus and a Chautauqua Center. They even started to build the Chautauqua headquarters. They would have Mark Twain, he bragged, would come and speak, and all these great speakers. It didn't really pan out. The Great Depression squashed the Chautauqua, and the goat farmer moved in. And about, 25 years later, we moved in. And now it's been St. Stephen's Episcopal School since 1950. I told you the goals they had. The school was co-ed from the get-go, It racially integrated in 1957, and at no small cost. There were quite a few donors, several donors that had pledged $250,000 each to the school, which in 1957 was a lot of money. And Bishop Hines, when they revolted, he said, "We don't need your money." So good for him. And of course, when St. Stephen started, it was only a boarding school, as you can imagine. I don't think there was pavement. I think B Cave Road was paved in the 40s, but I don't think there was pavement from there out north into the peninsula after that. So there's the Chautauqua that they were going to build. That is roughly where the chapel is now, on top of the hill. It's St. Stephen's campus. It's a beautiful campus. We have the diocese itself owns our campus, and it owns St. Michael's, the land that St. Michael's Church sits on when it was moved. Did eminent domain move y'all, or why did St. Michael's move?
It's a great question, and I will refer to my father, who's in the audience, who
yeah?
is the Episcopal.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
That's
That's why I was asking you. I didn't, sorry, hey.
Why did we move there?
Yeah.
Well, we were at our old site where the Grove Restaurant is now.
Yeah.
Some of you may remember.
Yeah.
And the bishop said he was going to open a big church here,
Yeah.
which did not play well with another congregation only, 3 minutes drive away if you hit the lights right?
Yeah.
So there was a big uproar,
Yeah.
and they decided that it was better to invite us to become that congregation
Okay.
than to have two competing congregations that close together.
I see.
So,
I thought it might have been eminent domain for B Cave Road's expansion.
eminent.
Domain, I thought maybe they foreclosed on the old church.
No, we'd already sold them the land on the BK Road.
Okay.
So that they wanted. We made good money off of that.
That's
and-
good. Built a new church. Yeah, yeah. Nice. So that's why that is. I never knew. Now I learned something on my own talk.
We opened in 2003. We actually started to move. The invitation was in 1997. It took a long time. Don't try constructing anything in Austin. And this is the least desired area to develop in Austin.
It's tricky, yeah. In fact, I'll have a question for you later about a lacy oak, because we're trying to place an auditorium, and I think we may have a champion tree. So I was going to ask you how big would be a champion, but we'll talk about it later. There's the digression I talked about. So the diocese owns all that land. They own the land that St. Michael sits on, they own us. So it's about 400 acres total that belongs to the Episcopal Church of Texas. All of that land is included in our land plan. About 370 of it is specifically the school's land. And we have, I looked it up today, we have over 490 feet of elevation change on our campus. So from the top of that knob hill right by St. Michael's Church down to the mouth of Devil's Canyon is 490 plus feet. And that's a lot of elevation change, which means we have a lot of biodiversity, which is something that will come up later when I talk about the peninsula. So we opened our school. That was going to be the big Chautauqua headquarters. It's kind of groovy looking. That was all in the ambitions that began in the 1890s and lasted till the Depression. This is the remains of what was built of that structure. There's Bishop Hines and Ben Brewster, the first headmaster, who emphatically declared he was not here to build a New England prep school in Texas, and he did not. There's really no campus that I can think of that's, or school culture that's more linked to the land it sits on. It's, I think, been integral to the identity of the school since the school's been open. In fact, it's the story as I've heard it, because obviously I was not there in the 50s to be a part of this conversation, but that the choice of the Spartans for mascot was a sort of a function of the campus. It was a pretty ascetic environment at the time. Spartans was a self-evident choice because, the Spartan lifestyle is what they were living. In fact, Coach Pascal complained that we could no longer call ourselves the Spartans once we put air conditioning in the gym. At that point, we were sissies. We didn't deserve to be Spartans anymore. The school had stables. The school had a rifle range. I actually discovered the rifle range when we were building the Meredith soccer field. And I took some of the old, there was a bunch of like rim shot 22 caliber cartridges, even some unspent shells that had been sitting down there since the rifle range was shut down right after Whitman got in the tower at UT. I think the school decided maybe that was a bad idea. But Ben Brewster, that was Ben Brewster's son. That's the Brewster headmaster. His son was a business manager when I got my job there. He got out an old handbook at St. Stephen's, and it talked about how you could bring your firearm to St. Stephen's, and you would check it in with a registrar, and it would be kept in the school's gun safe, and you could check it out for use at the rifle range with a responsible adult member of the faculty. The very next paragraph talked about how there would be absolutely no Victrolas allowed on campus. So you could bring your firearm, but not your record player to St. Stephen's. So it was in Texas, even if it was co-ed and racially integrated. The horses are gone, the rifle range has been gone a long time, but the school carries on, and it's still a beautiful place. Now, much like I think the early folks at St. Stephen's thought they could farm, they also thought that they were doing a good job of managing the land. The location of this place and that place are really important to the way the land evolved, and I learned a lot about that over the years of working there. But the ghosts did not do that land any favors. And what we thought was good land management at the time was simply to do nothing, to ignore that land. And that's not all bad. I mean, I think fortunately, I think the juniper tree or the mountain cedar is getting rehabilitated lately, and I appreciate that. I think the cedar brake that evolved began to hold on to what soil was left. The cedar duff began to build some soil and hold some moisture. But we have lost a lot of other woody species of plants and a lot of diversity. So we're going back now. I made the mistake of eloquently arguing to campus committee that we were losing red oaks at an alarming rate, and if we didn't do something, we'd lose our trees. And they said, great, you should be on campus committee and you should do that. So that was the first step towards this job, I think. And we have begun to work on that kind of thing. Parents get excited, I think, allergy sufferers and some misinformed folks, when they think that they can come out and help me kill every cedar tree on campus. That is not happening. It's supposed to be there. In fact, the history, I keep saying the peninsula. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? Let me go forward. There we go. So this is MapRight GIS app or software that we use. This is the peninsula. That big, then it kind of comes on down there. So there's a big piece of land that jets into the river from the south side. I have put in red the plats that are St. Stephen's property. We used to have a little more down here, but further over here, kind of up this way. We bought what became St. Michael's up here when an office tower was going to go in, and we didn't want an office tower looming over us. So we somehow, Fred Weisbach, the headmaster at the time, convinced this diocese to let him buy that land and incur some debt. Then the dot-com bust came, the bubble burst or whatever, and the school was in financial trouble. So we ended up, the campus grew, and then they decided to move the church over there, and then we sold some of this land where the fancy gas station is and that stuff. We sold that land off to offset that cost. I miss it. Our champion oak is right about there, the biggest oak on campus. It's safe. It's almost in the creek bed. It'll never be, taken down, but it was massive. And we had, somewhere up here, we had one madrone tree left. And I think it may be underneath where a gas pump is now. I'm not sure exactly where it was. But that was sad too. But we got out of debt and the school's in good shape and the land is now secure. We're not in danger of having to sell anything to remain solid. So this is our land. This land was really interesting in that this entire peninsula was actually much more heavily wooded than much of the hill country because it was surrounded on three sides by water. It did not have a lot of wildfires over centuries. It didn't burn very often or very much. The first real industry in this part of the world was logging. Like when the railroad was coming through Texas, they needed cedar trees that were bigger than a foot in diameter to make railroad ties. And this place was heavily logged to provide timber for the railroad. And then charcoal and fuel wood for Austin, which, in the 19th century still used charcoal and wood for heat and cooking and things like that. So it was really clear. And there's really fascinating history. And I'm going to read a few of these things off to you just because they were entertaining to me. This is more stuff cataloged by Catherine Respis. This appeared in the Wild Basin newsletter in 1989. All of this stuff. I just highlighted some stuff. It talked about there was a band of Mormons that had a falling out with Brigham Young that settled at the mouth of Bee Creek. They had all kinds of stories about. It was very entertaining stuff. An insane woman got loose one time. They had to hunt her down, and one day a hermit who lived up here in Bee Creek found her and brought her back into town. That was very exciting, apparently. There were Indian alarms almost until 1900. Comanche would still come in here and hide because it was so thickly wooded and the topography was so rough. They could still hide out in here long after they'd been pushed out of Tarrytown. Of course, the logging features prominently. Fascinating stuff. The later cartographers came out and remarked on the soil that was lost by the logging that went on here. So I think the first real damage that was done to the land was the logging. I don't know if you've heard of Mary Sophie Young, but she was one of the first people to come through and do scientific evaluations of plant life and record those things. And she talked about the abundance of biodiversity in Bee Creek and in Devil's Hollow, which is the canyon on St. Stephen's campus. Those are two really important features. In fact, Devil's Canyon, as you call it now, would wind up getting 360 moved because there are species of plants that grow there, and this is the furthest reach of their, the furthest north that those plants grow because they're protected from the cold in there. Like, it's kind of like, I don't know about down here, I haven't been down in so long, but maybe like Hamilton Pool, there's tons of palmetto palm and things like that that you just don't see other places. So that's really fascinating. I don't know if y'all have heard about the Davenport oil widow who bought the Walsh Ranch and developed Davenport Ranch. And apparently she was responsible for the next big cataclysmic event for the land of the peninsula. In 1961, there was a fire. And much of the fuel for the fire was from her. She had tried to graze cattle further south up the hills, and she had cleared enormous amounts of land. And at Shelton had made her stop because her fires were already a threat. But that wood sat there for years until one day it caught on fire in 1961. And it burned all the way to Bee Creek this way, and it almost got to St. Stephen's campus. So those fires were the next big cataclysm, I think, that happened on the peninsula and really affected the nature of the land. Behind cows, which really didn't, at this point they were already figuring out the cattle industry wasn't a great industry for the hill country. Then came the goats. And I don't want to malign goats. I think goats can be a great tool and then a really fantastic tool in land management. Did y'all see them on Lady Bird Lake this last summer? They brought out the goats to knock back all the poison ivy without using chemicals. Goats can be great. They do what they're supposed to do. They eat, they poop, they break up the soil a little bit. But if you put too many out there, it's like, furry napalm. And they just took everything out. And that's what happened in our land. From what I understand from most of this, Wild Basin was never really heavily grazed. Cal Roy, who's Rob Roy Ranch, his land over there, he had a lot of cattle and he had goats, but he would never graze them very close to the land on Bee Creek because there were so many cedar choppers that lived there that would just kill them and take them and eat them, that he kept his cattle further away so that they didn't get poached. And then, of course, one of the really entertaining things I read about Bee Creek is that he talked about being able to wake up in the morning and smell all the fires because there were tons of distilleries in the Bee Creek Canyon where moonshiners were making hooch for the folks in town during Prohibition. And I even noted somebody famous, I never heard of him, but some famous rum runner was actually killed down here defending his still in what's now Wild Basin. So it's got such a peaceful and placid place now. It was once a rum runners and, shootouts and cedar choppers, which is kind of romantic, I think, to talk about. Kids love that story. The fire was actually such a big deal that it was front page news in the Statesman. I think it was just it was the Statesman and the American. I think back then it was both papers, not one. And it was front page news in there for about a week. The thing that knocked it off the headline was the Bay of Pigs. It was it was like headline news until the Bay of Pigs happened, and then it faded back. How many of y'all know about Now or Never? So the Now or Never organization came in after that. It was, of course, the guys that work here do. And I was really fascinated to learn, and this is from Catherine Respis, but it was really fascinating to learn about the school's involvement in all of that. So the school itself formed its own neighborhood association. It was, the boundaries of the neighborhood were coterminous with the campus because there was so many people living there. And they worked with folks over here and like Catherine Respis were very engaged with helping the Wild Basin come into existence, developing curriculum and stuff. In fact, I should pass this around. I didn't put it on here, but there's a letter from Orrin Pogue. Did I say that right? He was the chairman of the Wild Basin Wilderness Committee. And he wrote to Tad Montgomery, the headmaster of St. Stephen's, on September 1st, 1976, asking him to write the city and the county in support of this. He even sent him a suggested letter of what to write. Exactly word for word as it was suggested, where he wrote and talked about the potential development of an area that warned about because apparently 360 was already planned at that point. It was a dream that it was being talked about, but talked about having educational opportunities here for his students from St. Stephen's to come over. And then Mr. Montgomery talked about the value of having 2 large parcels of land as development encroached that would maintain biodiversity. That if Wild Basin and Vireo were alone, that there'd be too much incest amongst megafauna, that having St. Stephen's close by was good for the bird populations and the plant populations and stuff like that. So it's really interesting, even though we don't think about it much, and certainly institutions haven't worked closely together lately. They are really sister organizations, and it's fascinating to learn more about that. Going down. That's a picture of this campus in the 70s. It's changed quite a bit. This building is still there, and this building is still there, and this one is barely still there. It's in bad shape. Actually, that gym still exists as well. Things have changed substantially, and the school has grown. It's now only about 186 of our students are boarders, and the other 600 and something are day students now. So we're now primarily a day school, but we have a thriving boarding community in a time when boarding schools, by and large, are dying off in this country. So that's been nice. It was put here to be basically a boarding school for West Texas Episcopals. Now it's a boarding school for kids from all over the world that want to go to American University and come learn English, or tennis kids or soccer kids, or kids that come for some reason to be in Austin or do some of the programs that we have. A lot of international kids. Sadly, we have a lot of Mexican kids because it's cheaper to send your kid to St. Stephen's to board, which is probably, if you full pay, $40,000 a year. Because it's cheaper to do that than to leave them in Mexico, send them to a private school in Mexico City, and have personal security go around with them. Because kidnapping is such a problem. So we have a ton of those kids up here with our one security guard at the front gate with no gun. So, it's, I can understand why they would come. Having said that about the school and its cost, any student that goes there is means tested. And we give away over $2 million in aid every year. So the commitment to being a school for all of God's children is still there. And strangely enough, a lot of our ethnic and sort of international diversity is not always our economic diversity. Like a lot of our international kids are full pay kids. And a lot of our Austin kids are the ones that are on aid. So this is right about the time that 360 was going to go in. 360 was supposed to, it would be about where it is as it comes by you, but it would have gone left of the hill where St. Michael's is, and it would have gone over to what is now Bunny Run. St. Stephen's School Road and then Bunny Run going through there. I don't know if y'all know the street Bunny Run. That's got a good story too. It's named after Bunny Knoll. So when they extended postal service down there, they had to name the street. And everybody already called it Bunny Run because Bunny Knoll ran it every day. It had nothing to do with bunny runs. Bunny Knoll ran it every day, so it was Bunny's Run. So that became the street name. So the 360 was going to go through there, through now what is the track and football field, the parking lot, and straight out Bunny Run, and then would have come across and crossed the river a little bit west of where it crosses now. Needless to say, the school didn't want that. So Catherine Respis and friends at Wild Basin and other places mobilized to push the road back basically to the boundary of St. Stephen's, or pretty close where the boundary of St. Stephen's was then and is now, and get it away from campus so the campus could be preserved. And that was really successful. That's when she went into, along with biologists, went into Devil's Canyon and started documenting all those species that were in there. According to her, and I don't know this, and we don't have a baseline of data, but the building of 360 still had an impact on that canyon, however. There's a lot of perched aquifers in this part of the world. There's one underneath our chapel. We know that because every time it rains, there's that hillbilly road that goes down to the lake, and there's wet weather springs that pop up every time it rains, and it's directly below our hill. According to Catherine, that road opened in 1982, and I was at Hill Country, picking my nose. I have no idea what was going on in that creek, but according to her, that creek flowed almost year-round and had a lot more constant water flow than it does now. And it's her opinion that the cuts that were necessary to put 360 where it is now cut off the school from some of those perched aquifers that used to feed the creek. I don't know if that's true, but it's a reasonable speculation. It could also just be climate change and a drying climate. I don't know what happened. I wish I'd have gotten pictures of that once we started talking about it. It's a beautiful place. Tons of flowstone, travertine formations in the open air. It's like being in a cave under the sky. It's a really beautiful place. There's a picture from it. So we got rid of the 6 or 8 lane highway, and it became more of a scenic highway, and it got moved up. So we softened the blow of that, and it went pretty well. Actually, St. Stephen's, Davenport Ranch, Rob Roy, and Wild Basin were part of different land swaps to build big parcels of land that were uninterrupted. So all 4 of those entities, 2 residential developments in the school, Wild Basin, did some pretty shrewd, I think, smart, forward-thinking things to preserve this land, which is encouraging. We did make a mistake, though. The bishop could have bought more land on Rob Roy's side, because we own halfway across that canyon. How do I go back? So you can see the canyon mouth is right here. So we own up here. He could have bought, I think this line could have gone across here, and this line could have gone straight down. So we have lakefront, but all of that could have been on St. Stephen's campus. Oh my God, it would have been really great. Yeah. So anyway, we didn't get everything right, and you can see, of course, the Wild Basin. And I'm not sure which one's Vireo and which y'all. Is this Vireo?
Yes.
And is that Vireo too, or is that y'all?
That's very good.
Okay. I can't keep it straight. Somebody from Vireo came out, a grass expert, that doesn't work there, and she's a St. Stephen's parent actually as well, but she works with them. We discovered a rare grass, hill country grass, on the western slopes of our campus, over the lake. So Native American seed, and some of the folks are gonna come out and try to harvest seed. I could look it up on the email, I don't know. I'm gonna say this on camera, and it's not a curse word, okay? The joke in the industry is those folks are the grass holes. Like the people, grass people are a special breed, like the people that really know can stand here and name 10 grasses, and I'm like, blue stem and Johnson grass. I mean, that's a special breed of expert. So we were walking along, and I would have sworn it was just like a runt blue stem or something. I had no idea what it was. But a very special grass, and I was super excited. Didn't know it existed until she told me. So that's the history of our land. I think of our two institutions together. There's so much more in that archive. It was really fascinating. And I do think the history of this this is a really interesting piece of land in general. Its isolation, the fact that it was so woody for so long, it became a real logging area. Obviously not a sustainable logging area, but a logging area. And then the type of people that attracted there initially because of its isolation. Comanches, fleeing rangers, rum runners, bootleggers, cedar choppers, and really rich kids. No. Or some rich kids. So now the outdoor club. So now we get into what's more my job. So the St. Stephen's has done a lot of outdoor ed over the years, the magic of St. Stephen's is we don't really have an overarching pedagogy. We just get motivated, smart people and stick them with maybe 15, 16 kids, and really cool things happen. The downside to that sometimes is when those people go, their program goes, or sometimes we're duplicating efforts. So one of the reasons my job was created a few years ago was to start to consolidate these things and work more closely together. In 1990, the Outdoor Club was formed. There they are in Shannon Rock. I didn't start working at St. Stephen's for a few more years. Although some of you may know a guy named Cat Brooks, the 6'8" guy right there. He was a ceramics teacher at the time, a local ceramic artist. Have you ever seen him they're all over town, the little ceramic bird houses. It's kind of his claim to fame. There they are, caving in Mexico, which is also very cool. In any case, I'll just pile on. This is the Straw Vale House, built by students in about 92 or 3. It was led by the two founders, Troy Lanier, who's back at St. Stephen's, and Miriam Mertuzza, who's now Dr. Mertuzza. That's her. She looks like a student there, but she was a teacher. I think she was probably 26 in that picture. So they took one of the original maintenance buildings up on the hill, which is a concrete block building, and they added the straw bale structure. And it's still our headquarters today. It's now too small, we're outgrowing it, we have plans to move. But the structure is safe, apparently it's the best acoustics on campus, and the art department wants it. And it'll be like an a cappella space, so that's cool. I'm glad to hear it. I did not know. Although I fear that the acoustics are good because I have 25 mountain bikes and 8 canoes and all this stuff piled in, and when I take it out, it's suddenly going to be really hot, but we'll see, we'll find out. The caving team, so now we have the Devil's Canyon. It was Devil's Canyon Wilderness Program, now it's Devil's Canyon Adventure Program. So as a part of the outdoor club, we did these things kind of as one-off adventures. They evolved into what are essentially alternative sports. So these kids now get fitness credits to be on these different teams. They're unconventional teams. And I'll digress a little bit about my philosophy about them because I think we've hit a gold mine with this kind of program. She nods because her son was a big part of it. He did this exact pit, actually. This is Stevens Gap in Alabama. It's about a 150-foot rappel through the keyhole. So that's Michael Garcia, current junior, going down the pit. And that's actually just taken on my phone. I'm not a fancy photographer. I just, every now and then I have the presence of mind. Oh, wait. And there you go. So these sports evolved, and I grew up in athletics, and most of the opportunities I've had in my life have been as much a product of soccer as any education that I got. And in many ways, I'm a huge fan of sport, but I do not totally fall for that axiom that we all listen to, and most people accept as conventional wisdom, that sports builds character. I'm not sure I totally believe that. I think good role models build character. I think difficult challenges build character. But we only have to look at professional athletes to see people who may not have a lot of character. And frankly, not having character may make them better. You know, Lance Armstrong didn't win 8 Tour de France because he was a humble and nice guy, right? He was an arrogant guy, and that's why he was really good. And having been lucky enough to play sports at a pretty high level, I was surrounded by men who didn't accept adolescence. Now, they could suffer for a goal. They could work with people they don't like for a common goal. Like, there's many things you get out of sports, but you need somebody that's a good leader that demonstrates good character to build good character. And why I think these sports are so amazing, I mean, mountain biking is still a conventional sport. It's a competitive sport, but caving is not competitive. Climbing is not competitive. Canoeing is not competitive. I mean, you can compete in canoeing. I laugh because we're very not competitive in canoeing. We struggle many days to just go straight. So, but I think all the tertiary benefits that we really have athletics and education for are lifted in this kind of program because they're the most important things suddenly. So student leadership, resiliency, grit, those things, these things teach that better because there's no focus on competition. When I ran the soccer academy, I would make every decision for those kids. I planned their meals. I was monitoring their meals. If you played this many minutes, you drank this much Pedialyte, you study at this time. I removed everything, that would distract them from studying or competing in soccer. In this, kids plan the meals. Kids cook the meals. Kids help teach the skills. Kids, all these outdoor skills that they impart to each other and that they lead each other on are the most important part now. And I think it's just an amazing program that I stumbled into. I didn't create this thing. But when I took it over, I suddenly realized this is what we've really been after, and we've been distracted by competition. And I don't think we should give up competition. I'm not saying that. But I just think this program does a much better job of teaching those things. And it's amazing the culture, the confidence. I mean, we do vehicle maintenance because the places we go, AAA ain't coming. So before we go on trips, we're checking tire pressures and taking an extra spare. We make sure we have the first aid kit that goes to the car, the fix-a-flat, the jumper cables, this kind of thing. So kids are learning how to do all these kinds of things. And I think ultimately in life, when they encounter situations, it's these kids who don't soil their pants. Like, they've learned to deal with situations, and when something comes up, they stop and they just start to think. They've faced things and they've learned, all right, well, how do I break this down? What do I need to do? And I think it's just done an amazing job of teaching kids those kinds of skills, which are invaluable. I do think sports are great. I do think they can build character, but I don't think that they just somehow magically, you join a football team and you're going to be a super good citizen. I don't think that's how that works. So that's the caving team. There were funnier pictures, but this is after success. We do cross canoe rescues in the pool. We practice this every year. So one set of kids will flip their boat over, and they help push it over the other canoe till it's on top. They flip it over and put it back in. And then these kids hold up while the girls got back in. I should have brought you a video because it's one of the most entertaining parts of the year for me. Because there's flailing and falling, but it's very interesting. You can see how happy she is that she got back in the boat. So that's the canoeing program. Some of my mountain bikers at a race, and there's a parent too. I think that's at Flat Rock Ranch in near Comfort. Is that like Flat Creek, Flat Rock? Which one's near? There's both of them, but which one's near Comfort, Texas? Maybe Flat Creek. I don't know.
There's a Flat Creek near Fernald's Falls.
And then this is Flat Rock. Yeah, this is really close to comfort.
That's mother and daughter in that picture.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just thought, first I picked this because Hannah Hasidi's doing a really cool chimney move on this rock, but then I noticed this is one of my coaches. He's also a doctor. This is Frank Chia, Dr. Chia. It's just maybe he's chewing his sandwich, but it's just a funny picture. This is in the Rio Grande Gorge in Taos, New Mexico. So that's our climbing team. And again, especially these high angle sports like caving or climbing, statistically these are very safe. They're much safer than all the other sports at the school. I mean, much safer than football, which if invented today probably would not even be banned. I enjoy watching it on Saturday, but I don't want to play it. So these are highly managed. We can only sport climb where bolted routes are maintained. We can't trad climb, which means set cams and stuff in cracks. We have to be on bolts. We can't scuba cave, for example. That's very deadly and we're not allowed to do it. But we can go in map caves that aren't underwater. So we do stuff that's, from a risk standpoint, highly managed. But you're a monkey brain when you're sitting above a 200-foot pit and you're on a rope and you got to go down. So you've got kids shaking. And then they have to do all the training. And these kids get the same training that firemen get. We have a fireman's tower. They do the same training. And they have to go through their training. And I mean, think about that kind of confidence that builds when they are doing these skills or something like this. When they get to that peak and they've done that 5-10 climb and there's a little bit of, and I think a little bit of, I can face things. So it's really wonderful to have that. Now, that's our adventure program stuff. We also do a lot of stuff with education. We've had a lot of motivated teachers over the years that do a lot of cool things, and my new job has really been about consolidating all that and putting all that together. So we have a big grant that's we call the West Texas program. It's not limited to West Texas. It can be anywhere in Texas. It's to just take kids out and do stuff. It's an alum who gives us the money. His only stipulation is that we don't just do nature conservancy, we also go visit functioning farms or ranches. So we'll go out and work, on somebody's ranch or somebody's farm. We'll go pull fences or help build fences, or we'll go, Independence Creek is not manned anymore, so we stopped going. I would love to go back, but we go to Nature Conservancy land too. Catch and tag mountain lions, or catch and don't get near feral hogs. The mountain lions are pretty safe, actually. We'll tag them. The kids aren't allowed to do this, but the cute thing is, we had a teacher for years at St. Stephen's named Johnny Wilson. Have y'all seen The Big Lebowski? That's Johnny Wilson. That was him. He was as a science teacher. That's him. I mean, he didn't drink White Russians at school or anything, but that's just that personality. So when you're done and the lion starts to come to, there's all these kids around, so you all get behind the line, and then Johnny would go out there and just steadily tug on the lion's tail. And as the lion wakes up and you're pulling his tail, its instinct is to run away. So everybody gets behind and Johnny pulls the tail, and then it wakes up and just takes off. So that's the safe way to let a lion go. They're really the most dangerous animal we've ever tried to work with, or the feral hogs. And in fact, when we were at the HEB Foundation camp out there, and we gone to near Lakey, and there was a cage for a hog, and we got to the cage, and the cage was destroyed. Like the pig's like, oh yeah, I'm not standing here, and just tore the cage apart and took off. Some kind of hogzilla. And the kids are looking at this just, like, oh my God, that's terrifying. And then Johnny, made some noises and stuff, and kids left the ground facing this way and somehow landed in the back of the truck, thinking the hog was back. So that's our West Texas program as an example of kind of things we do. We started environmental courses in 2007. Johnny and a woman named Debbie Van Ryn, both retired since then. This is a picture of Devil's Canyon from this year. You can see the formations we were talking about. You can see some now. So It's not our best example, but this is kind of my example of what West Cave has done. Like it's, these softer layers have worn out and now the rock is growing back and sealing. There, upstream from this, there's more. It's really amazing. This year was really rare, and this completely ran dry. So by August, we typically still have standing water. I mean, you don't want to swim in it, but we typically still have water. Fortunately, down in the canyon, it was still alive. We had a lot of plant life, and it's the only place on campus where you can still find the other creek, all the lacy, the maidenhair ferns. I mean, I don't know if it's dead. It doesn't. I don't know about y'all, but I tried to plant maidenhair fern in my yard. It immediately dies on my little wet feature. But it can go through 8 months of drought, look dead, spit on it, and it turns green again. I'm like, you're the toughest plant out here. I put you in my garden, and you die immediately. I think it's just stubborn, pouty, or something. I don't know. So that's the environmental courses. The kids are now doing science on the land as a part of the class. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'll run away forever. But for example, we have one zone right along the entrance road, which is a flat area, which we know was once grazed. So it was almost exclusively a cedar break, and the only thing left that was surviving were live oaks. So over a series of 5 years, we're on the 4th or 5th year this year. We cleared a certain amount of juniper. And this one, the next year, we were a little more aggressive. We had a rubric. Any tree below a certain size, we'll cut it. Any tree within a certain range of a live oak, we'll cut it. And then we've gotten more aggressive as we've gone down. The funny thing is, it all looks the same because the cedars have gotten much bigger and thicker as we've gone down, so you don't see a lot of change. And then the kids in subsequent years monitor. They take the observations from previous years. So grass has recovered, red oaks are back, black walnut came back. We found a lot more bird diversity now. We started doing bird surveys a couple years ago. And with the mixed canopy, we're getting more bird diversity. So that's been really encouraging. And we now have, if you need any mulch, come talk to me because I got a lot of mulch. We started a program called the Land Stewardship Project, the Glassland Project, as most kids call it. Each incoming 6th grade will be assigned a parcel of land. And it's their job to study and steward that land for their 7 years at school. This picture is not from it. And didn't notice that until about an hour before I came here. And I decided to leave it. This is actually Mayfield Park. Because we take the 7th grade every year. So at the upper school, the kids do their own service learning. And they have indirect service, which is just kind of random stuff. A lot of it's with me on campus. And there's direct service where they build a relationship with an institution and work with that. In the middle school, we organize stuff for them and we lead them on it. So every year in the 7th grade, I take them out to some park and preserve, and I capitalize on the destructive urge of 12-year-olds, and we kill ligustrum and nandina. Like crazy. Okay. So this is Mayfield Park, and we went there for about 4 or 5 years straight, and they're like, yeah, don't come anymore. We don't have any left, so now you're going to go to, I think we're at Bolden Creek now. So these are kids killing ligustrum. That's not as ligustrum. Although if you do that with kids, keep an eye on them because silk tassel looks a lot like ligustrum, and they're not real discriminate killers. So keep an eye on them. I mean, they're not going to wipe out the silk tassel population, but you should watch it. And it's a wonderful activity. I mean, I think when you take 70 kids, if I was out there by myself with a reed wrench, or now we have polar bears. They're a new kind of weed wrench. The guy that made weed wrench, this is total digression, but he made these cool orange things and they grab a plant and they just lever them out of the ground. I tried to order some more one time, and he went on a screed about how he's not going to make them anymore because the government taxes their sale, and he doesn't want the government to have any money, so he's not going to make any more weed wrenches. So they can't have any more of his money. I'm like, you're not going to get any money. I think he's like an off the grid guy. He makes great weed wrenches, but there's a new company in Canada, and they make polar bears. And they're actually a little bit better, frankly, so it worked out. But that was an interesting conversation. So,
This patent expired, by the way.
did it? Yeah. So anybody can make them
People are
now.
making them.
Yeah. The polar bear is great. And it's adjustable. And they spot weld SSES land onto it. So now when I'm, with the city out there and there's 400 of them, I go, those are definitely mine. I'm not donating these. Although they mostly have the old orange weed wrenches. So that's the two projects, the land stewardship project. And this has been I was a history major, not a science major, and I taught history. And for me, a lot of these things are more about community building and getting kids engaged and caring about their community and the land their community sits on. I think it was Dobie who has a really great quote about how patriotism and land can't be separated. You can't love love the idea of an identity or nation and not love the land that it sits on. And you separate them at your peril. So it's definitely something we do. Yes?
Did you say you assign parcels of land to the students on their school property?
Yes.
How large are these parcels?
So it's not one student, it's the entire class. So the incoming sixth grade class will get, it's usually in the vicinity, a little bit less than an acre. I've had one parcel a little bit over an acre, but it's usually about an acre of land.
How much?
An acre, or a little bit less than an acre, roughly the size of a football field. And they'll go, most of sixth grade, I'm in middle school, I've kind of made up my mind what I want to do with this land. So I'm gently leading them from behind to discover what I want them to do. They're 11. So, if they were 17, by the time they're 17, they've done a lot of work and they're seeing, in fact, this year for the first time, alumni weekend, the class of 2018 and 19 are going to come back and work on their land. And they're going to clear some of the juvenile junipers that have popped up. And frankly, my new enemy is Yopa. It's like I clear some cedar and hoping I'll get some flame leaf sumac come back. Like 2 days later, it's like, where did all this Yopa come from? It's really aggressive too. I'm not trying to kill all of it either, but it's sort of like, give the other plants a chance, man. So they get that land, they'll mostly observe it in sixth grade. We might, if there's a rain out day for an activity, we might go make some seed bombs out of mud and go throw them. But mostly sixth grade is observation. Seventh grade, they start making plans. And in eighth grade, very often we've got the mulcher out and we'll take laser transits out and we'll plot a perfectly level course across their land. So this kind of winding line that stays perfectly level. And then all the cedar that we've chopped down, this would be an example of an activity. All the cedar or juniper that we've taken down, we'll mulch it. And then we'll build a berm on that line that we charted that's perfectly level. So it starts capturing the soil and water and whatnot like that. And on our entrance road is the first place we tried that. And because we were doing it just piling the brush up, breaking it down and kind of making a dense pile. But which works good too. It's probably better for critters, but the mulch pile, we've actually built, like behind that pile now, there's the grass is visibly greener and thicker. The soil is 4 or 5 inches deeper. Like it really works. It's really amazing what you see. And then, I'm not going to go into all of our sustainability initiatives. I think they go hand in hand with education. This is just a big one we did this year. On these buildings and others, we've installed 750 kilowatts, we installed 750 kilowatts of solar last year. Our goal is to get to a meg. It's on the grid, we don't have batteries, but we're trying to go further and further towards being a green campus. And I think that's, at the school, I think we're really deliberate about tying outdoor stuff, sustainability stuff, and social justice stuff together. These are also things I think we separate in ways that sometimes even pit them against each other. And the same people that Bishop Hines, this guy was a believer. He's got a great Hugh Downs interview where he talks about, if it doesn't hurt, you're not doing it right. Like if you really believe this, you got to push it a little bit. And there's that constant tension at a school, for example, where we want to push, but the business office is like, well, that's going to cost more. Fortunately, in the case of sustainability, now that's long-term, it's cheaper. So it's an easy sales job, but pushing in these other things as well is really important. And I think teaching those things together and linking social justice to environmentalism, to sustainability, is what we're trying to do. So that's our solar panels. Really exciting. We now have these monitors in our library and our science building that show, like, it's dollar signs are clicking off how much we're saving as it's running, how many cars, the equivalent of how many cars didn't drive that day because we're doing it, that kind of thing. So it's a cool thing, and the kids can monitor that data. We're looking at installing a business building management system. We only have 3 meters on campus, electric meters. One runs the back gate, 4 meters on campus. The back gate, the welcome center, the water tower at the very top of our hill up there, and the rest of campus is on 1 meter. So we're going to get a building management system that meters buildings. We can micrometer classrooms, and we can have all this information and start managing that data. But more importantly, the kids can start planning those things. Well, we can adjust the AC here, and like if we get that building management system, and it used to be really expensive. We never did it, but now it's super cheap. It's all Wi-Fi. I mean, you don't have to have hard wires or anything. It's gotten really cheap. So we're doing things like that. Now I put this in here. This is an old slide. This girl's in law school now. He's a firefighter, sorry. So we still have this compost system going, and we would just compost post-meal waste from lunch. Bear in mind, we're a boarding school. So we serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, breakfast and dinner are probably for about 300 people, and lunch is for about 1,000 people. So lunch is the big meal. But all we've been composting is post-meal waste from lunch. So all the rest of that carbon is going to a landfill, and it's getting into the atmosphere, or it's releasing methane, which is even worse. I think it's, 6, 8, I don't know how many times stronger a greenhouse gas it is, but it's a much stronger greenhouse gas. So all that's going to go in. This year, we've decided, and we're in the process of buying the equipment, we're going to be composting 100% of our food waste, kitchen and meal, all waste, 100%. And a windrow system down on our B lot. We call it the B lot now because we have beehives down there. For years it was the landfill lot because the school's original, we had our own landfill for years. Capped that in clay and put grass on it. And now we're going to have this new composting system down there. So 100% of our food waste. None of that carbon, none of that methane is going to the landfill. It's all going to stay on our campus. And then start to think about the other benefits that go out of that. So now, as we go through and try to do all these programs to restore the soil on campus from the overlogging and the overgoating, we'll have a jump start. We have compost we can start to spread on our land. We also have our landscape waste that we can mix into. So we have grass, we don't collect grass trimmings from most of campus, but on our athletic fields, you gather that TIF Bermuda hybrid or Sahara Bermuda. You don't leave that on the field. So we have all that going on there, leaf matter, and then all this mulch that we've been mulching. We can start putting it in there. We'll have a screener, so we start building a windrow. We're buying a windrow turner that'll churn this stuff up and keep it oxygenated and keep it at the right temperature. Kids will monitor temperature. Kids will monitor moisture levels. By making it a more aerobic system than this, it'll smell a lot better. This is right by the middle school, and it's not the most pleasant thing on a hot, humid day. And frankly, it's close to the middle school and the dining hall, and the flies are an issue. Down there, more flies the merrier. I mean, the flies are great for compost, but they're not great for your middle school or dining hall. So we eliminate some of those problems. We generate compost that can be used in our own landscaping. It can be used on our own land. We won't buy compost anymore. We have a screener that will screen the compost through, and the big stuff's going to go back in the windrow. But we can also screen all that mulch. So we can screen off the smaller stuff and use it in our own landscaping. We won't buy mulch anymore. And the big stuff will go in the compost. or go out to be swales on the land to collect soil or water. So it's really a great program. And I think one of the biggest thrusts of stuff like this is it is about climate change and a thing in education called climate despair or climate anxiety. These kids are growing up. I mean, when we were growing up, it was the Cold War. Like, is Ronnie going to push the button? Or are we all going to die? Well, for my parents, it was the Cuban Missile Crisis. And for me, it was the end of the Cold War. And the Cold War ended, and suddenly all this existential threat was just gone. Woo, party. We're not going to die. But now these kids have the climate crisis. And it's a big problem. And it's a scary problem. And I think I worry about the anxiety and despair. And those are the terms we use. I mean, they're not a clinical diagnosis from a mental health perspective, but they're just jargon or phrases that have been coined to describe that phenomenon. And I also think we don't talk enough about soil. We talk a lot about, and I'll connect those things in a second. We talk a lot about carbon in the atmosphere. And we dig it up and we hurl it in the air and all the bad effects that are with that. And I don't try to vilify a carbon economy or carbon fuel. I mean, I think it was almost an evolutionary step, the amount of power we released when we learned to use combustion to do work. It's astonishing how much power that gave us and how that changed our material standard of living. But there's consequences to burning carbon and hurling into the atmosphere. But we don't talk about how we've destroyed the microbiome of 90% of the soil that we cultivate on Earth. And that's where the carbon's got to go. It's soil that takes carbon. So we do a lot of stuff with Dr. Lynn Kagan's Soil Food Web. We talk about restoring hypha, restoring fungus in the soil, and the symbiotic relationship that plants have with soil. Plants rely on those things, and when we eliminate those things, we have to use tons of chemical fertilizers and pesticides to keep the plants alive because the soil doesn't give it to them anymore because there's no fungus, there's no hypha, there's none of that in there. So, according to these soil scientists, if we restore the microbiome of the soil on Earth and the land that we farm, and we can, it's a trend now in farming, but we wouldn't need solar power. We wouldn't need electric cars. If we, in 10 years, it would take us 10 years to convert that soil over, and we could get carbon back below 350 parts per million, just fixing soil, not fixing energy, right? So on campus, we've calculated that, and that means that on our campus, if we restore our soil to its peak health and the microbiome of our soil and the biodiversity of our woody plants and grasses, our soil annually will sequester between 1,700 and 2,000 tons of atmospheric carbon sucked into our dirt. So my big hope with programs like this, and every kid's involved, even if it's just putting their food in the right bin at the end of lunch. My hope with all this is that they're going to be a part of a community that was engaged and did something effective, and that they feel empowered when they leave St. Stephen's, that they understand the value of community, that they become a part of a community, and that they also understand the power that they can wield, that they can do something like this. Because it's cool. I mean, kids get excited when they're in 6th grade eco-lit, and we talk about how much carbon we can soak up on our campus if we, just fix the soil. And if we have solar panels, and if we do this, and if we do that. I mean, it's a big puzzle, and I don't think soil will ever be the only piece. But I hope that conversation starts to become as important as how much carbon we're putting in the atmosphere. How much soil are we fixing? How much soil are we destroying? I've got a few more pictures. That's our chipper, our greatest toy. Kids can use that. Don't look at this kid, he didn't have his goggles on. We just have to have an adult at the panic bar. It's a big scary machine, but it really is very hard to get sucked into a chipper. There's a bump bar down there and a panic bar. Like if you're getting pulled in, you'll hit it and it'll kill the machine. We actually now, especially after last year's ice storm, We provide all of our own wood for smoking. We smoke all our lunch meats at the deli in there, and we have barbecue about every 2 weeks. And all the wood comes from campus. Kids cannot use chainsaws. I think it'd be cool to teach them, but I jokingly brought it up with the business office. The COO didn't even think it was funny. Just looked at me like, oh, she knows me. I'm always up to something. They can run the splitter. We have a big hydraulic splitter, so I can cut logs and they can, and that's very fun. Machines are really cool toys to kids. And this is our flume. Sorry I didn't get pictures of the kids. The other teachers took pictures of that. We just installed the flume on St. Stephen's Creek. There it is. Afterwards, it's water flowing through it right now. The longest creek that flows through our campus the watershed's kind of is the hill where St. Michael's is. And then there's two big and one small tube that come over from Arroyo under 360, go under our creek. St. Stephen's Creek flows right up that peninsula, right past Bridge Point, before Knoll Woods. It turns right and goes under 360. And you know that lagoon at the golf course? That's where St. Stephen's Creek comes up. This is on that creek. Just around that curve is it's like the boundary of our property, where it goes out. So we're measuring now stormwater runoff. And we've got 2 weather stations up. We're going to have 3 more this year. And we're going to start laying baseline data where we correlate rainfall to runoff. And the hope is that in 10 or 15 years, we've done a lot of work. We're going to see the storm surge come down and the duration of flow extended as we have soil that holds more water because we've restored the hypha or whatever. We've made it spongier. So this is our latest project. The kids put in last Saturday. We put that in. No, 2 Saturdays ago. Was 2 Saturdays ago the eclipse? Is that okay? Yeah, that's when that was. I have some cool pictures of the dappled sun coming through with little crescents. I should have put that picture in there. Yeah, we stopped for a minute to go look at it. So that's our latest project. And that's where this is where I can have kids use the tools. So I wish I brought them to have kids. I teach them how to use impact drivers and hand tools and stuff like that, which they don't use in their everyday lives much, I think. I probably know how to do the parents, honestly. So that's our flume. And that is the last slide I have. Yeah. I probably talked too long, but that's what we're up to. That's our outdoor ed and our history of our land and your land. I really hope in the future we start doing that kind of stuff together again. I think it'd be cool. And, I know y'all work with balconies and all that. We're just now reconnecting with them. And Catherine Respis, who is the faculty who wrote this stuff and you said she had a role here, actually, officially.
She was on the board for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And she was also the chair of the education committee
Yeah.
for quite a while.
Yeah. She passed away in 2015 the summer after her 50th year of teaching at St. Stephen's. Yeah. I don't think I'll be there when I'm 70. Oh, maybe 76. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know if I can. The adventure program stuff may have to. I don't know. There are already caves I don't crawl into anymore. This hurts. My shoulders don't do that anymore. Do you have any questions? Yes.
If you catch feral hogs, why would you let them go?
We don't have any hogs on our campus.
You went somewhere else.
We went somewhere else. We didn't let it go. The hog destroyed the cage. It got trapped and then just decided to leave and smashed the cage.
I thought you said something about you were catching them and releasing.
We catch and release
and
those.
tagging and releasing, but maybe
That was the mountain lions. Sorry, I probably switched trains of thought too quickly in my bounce around way. We catch and release mountain lions. We would trap, and then the landowners kill the hogs. Kids don't. I can't give them guns either. But the funny thing about the story was that the hog just didn't like the cage and decided to leave. And it was impressive. So no, and we're blessed. And maybe that's one other bonus to the peninsula because I'm sure you've heard the saying, there's two types of land in Texas. Land that has hogs and land that doesn't have hogs yet. And we're the don't have hogs yet land, but, you know, crossing my fingers. No hogs here, are there? Yeah. I mean, yeah. Knock on particle board. And we have 2 species of fox. We have bobcats. We have coyotes. We have ringtails, porcupines, raccoons, skunks. Although we do actually pay someone to take the skunks. We don't mess with the rest of them, but.
Did you hear about our river otters?
I heard they're back, yeah. That's amazing. We do not have those. I don't think we'll ever have enough water, but that's really amazing. And because he was telling me about I think he had a water turbidity sensor, and it was going off, and it's because the otters are down there like flopping the water around and setting off the sensors. Yeah, we don't have otters. I'm very jealous.
Do you have a plant list?
We have a woody species list. We don't have any kind of grass list.
Are you using iNaturalist?
Yes. We use iNaturalists with the classes and with the kids. And we use the Cornell, what's the bird thing called? eBird. Merlin, yeah. The guy that runs all that was a soccer teammate of mine in college. So there's nothing like a little West Austin cronyism. It's like when Carter Smith was the director of Texas Parks and Wildlife years. He's St. Stephen's class 86, so I got some good home cooking during those years. He helped me a lot with our program. And I hope to one day, like if you've been to some of these places and you see all those little signs on ranches for all the awards we win, I hope to soon have a bunch of those, as you enter St. Stephen's campus. Yeah, he was a great resource. We do the bird surveys and we do iNaturalist to compile. I need to learn more about grass. And then the last inventory we took of plants in the canyon was in, I think, 80 or so with Catherine Respis and those teachers then. And they went down and identified lots of obscure stuff. I mean, the kids think I know everything because I can tell them, that's American beautyberry. It's not like, it doesn't take much to impress them sometimes, but because they just don't know much. I mean, they're eager to learn, but, I can make something up and they're like, okay. I don't know grasses that well. And now I know we have a rare grass. Now I'm interested in learning more, but I have a hard time. I don't know about y'all, but I don't have a discriminating eye when it comes to grass, and they all kind of look similar in some ways. I mean, I can tell Johnson grass. I can spot King Ranch, which we do have on the old right-of-way. When they built 360, they used King Ranch. When the new construction got in a little bit of trouble with us when their silt stuff failed last spring, we have a ton of silt on one of the tributaries of St. Stephen's Creek. And they sent me the new TxDOT seed mix, and it's really great. There's no King Ranch in it. It's a really cool seed mix. So they've laid down all that carpet up there now, right there by the gas station. And they, after we, got on them, there's like a 6-foot gabion where that pipe comes out now. So the water is slowing down when it comes to us. Yes?
Decades ago, we used to pedal over there and wander around campus. Can we still do that, or is it all locked up?
It is pretty locked up, and that was a difficult subject for us. Let me go back. So we had a security audit because we have, we're school, we have kids, and sadly, like even Eanes Elementary now looks like a fortress. They put ballistic glass up because it used to be outside, and we're not like that. We don't. Not all the doors are locked, but still, we have to do security. So the security consultant told us that we needed to fence our perimeter. And of course, the outdoor guy's like, yeah, I don't want a 2-headed deer. Like, we need a porous boundary. So we did build a new fence. And I feel terrible, but the entire stretch of our 360 boundary, and some of St. Michael's now has an 8-foot game fence. Now, we did not fence the whole perimeter, and I worked closely with St. Michael's. They actually wanted some help with fencing since we were going to pay for it, because they have had a problem with four-wheel drive trucks coming in on their south side, going around by the Boy Scouts, and then doing donuts in their septic field in their trucks, and then running over that wood fence as they leave out the front door, so to speak. So we put another big gate and fence. It doesn't continue all the way down the corner, it just blocks that access. And another big one right there where the Boy Scout gate is. And, you know, I have the key and they have a key. And then another one down here where they came in. And then we fenced this little stretch behind these houses right there. There's no fence anywhere here. There's no fence anywhere here. There's fence right here. And there's fence along 360. There's now the fire department there. And there's no fence at that creek. It's like if you were really determined,
You could find a way.
you could find your way in. It's not, I mean, it's dense vegetation, but we basically, the compromise we came to, where we tried to balance the needs of our obligations as stewards of land and wildlife, and our obligation to keep boarding students safe, is that we just really beefed this up. Because the fence that was there was built when 360 was built. It was like hog wire and 2 strands of barbed wire. And it was still there. And me and some students gathered it all up and got around a 16-foot trailer in the back of my truck. And we drove to the steel recycling place and we got $470. Yep. So I put $20 in my truck and took them to eat K-Bobalicious downtown. And the school got the rest. So, yeah, sadly we can't have a totally open boundary anymore. So, you know, I feel very badly when I see deer looking across there. But, you know, that was the compromise that I could convince the schools to make. That they could come and go freely here all over the places. We could not legally build a fence over here. That's protected habitat. We had we could have tried to do it without saying something, but this boundary is a center line of the creek, and then right here the creek goes out. So we'd be fencing. I mean, we're not going to fence the cliff on the other side of 360. So on the other side of Devil's Canyon. So it's just there was no point in that. That was not hard. So they agreed to that concession. And our security person actually worked hard with me. She's a retired FBI agent who runs our security line. She understood the priorities and worked with me, so it wasn't a fight.
When you have too big a perimeter, it's not secure anyway. You could have.
No. If somebody wants them, they're coming.
Fair point, yeah.
And it's a 8-foot game fence. I mean, there are wire dikes, you're in. You know, but during the pandemic, and I felt terrible in this too, because during the pandemic, I mean, we haven't had a lot of campers, like the homeless population. I did find a guy out there camping one time, but he was a young kid, and he grew up in New Mexico. I'm like, oh, you're in Texas now. Like, you can camp just about anywhere in New Mexico because it's like, I don't know, 85% federal land. So you're not trespassing, it's yours. Yeah. I mean, you're in Texas. Thank God you camped on the Episcopal School campus because you get shot if but you know, we've always had people coming out. If you want to see good maps of our trails, go to Strava, and some guy I've never met has a, map of our trails from his ride. During the pandemic, that spiked. We had like 1 week, I think we've had 57 people coming into campus that were unauthorized and unknown. And then up here at our water tower, we have game cameras we put up game cameras to see people coming in. And there's a gentleman up there doing things that we, wouldn't want him doing. I mean, he wasn't near kids or looking at kids, but he was doing things you don't want a guy doing on campus. So that was an easy sell, I think, at that point. And I felt terrible at the pandemic, like, give these people someplace to go. I mean, during the pandemic, I was one of the few faculty allowed on campus because I helped maintain the trails. And I didn't, at that point, I was already doing this job and no longer had many classroom duties. So I rode my bike every day. I was riding like 200 miles a week, and I just rode to every park and preserve in Austin. And I made up this document for the website where you could go to these different zones around where you lived and look at a park or preserve. And I would ride my bike and take pictures and put it on. It got the most traffic on our website during the pandemic. And I got a lot of credit and praise for doing it. But in my head, I was going, yeah, there's some middle school mom and dad at home, and I got to get this kid the hell out of here. Where can I go? Because they couldn't come to campus. We wouldn't, no day students. Basically, there was about 300 people living on campus without masks that first spring it happened, because we just locked the campus down. And the only people who come in was the dining hall crew and food deliveries. So it was a giant bubble. I mean, and I'm sure it was kind of nice compared to, when I think of all those people in Manhattan trapped in their apartment alone, they had 300 people. It was kind of nice. And now I don't know how deer, I still see a deer crossing, but I don't know when they do when they get down the hill. I mean, that fence terminates right there by the entrance to the church. And it was a really thick brush, but there's a 10-foot strip behind that fence where it ends, just it dead ends right there. There's a 10-foot strip behind it that's cleared so they could build it. You could probably, you could easily walk in there right now. It hasn't become a problem yet. And at this point, I will fight. If we try to do more fencing, I would fuss. Our critters are stressed enough, I think. Any more questions? Need any mulch?
Let's give a nice round of applause.